I wasn't expecting to be here tonight, but I am asking already that I come in November because I want to give a comprehensive city manager update. But I did see that there's an issue about the basins, so I don't know what the question is, so let me just dive in and give the update as best I can. So I believe the open question is what's happening to the basins. Is that generally it, or is there more specific detail than that at this point? Okay. So here's what I know, and then I'll tell you what we just did a couple hours ago. So there was an arrangement as part of this overall development, and those basins are former mining pits, and I don't even know what they were mining. I guess it was, couldn't have been gold, right? What was it, rock? Gravel. Anyone know?
Gravel pits.
Gravel pits, okay, great. They're rather large. One of them, I believe, is up, 70, 80 feet deep. So there was an agreement whereby a four-party joint powers authority was formed back in 2003 in September. So it's been 16 years. And in a nutshell, the agreement was during that time, the RIVERPARK, Legacy Partners was responsible for mitigation measures to shore up the walls of the pits, and they had to perform, and there's a series of remediation measures that have to be performed per the state. Right? There are state regulations about how you transform a former mine out of being the status of a mine, something like that. So over the time, they had to post a bond, a big chunk of money, perform the work, and get all the inspections from, and I forget the name of the agency, there's some state agency that oversees mines, closures of mines. And then in time, when they do a sufficient amount of work, they get to release themselves from the responsibility of the mine, essentially, and they trigger the notice to give those pits back to the Joint Powers Authority, right, the JPA. They actually triggered that last December of 2018, and for whatever reasons, the JPA did not respond. So, of course, they have the right and the legal right, based on the contract, to press us to go through the process. And the process is they release the pits, the basins, back to first the Joint Powers Authority, which is, oh, by the way, so the fourth party agreement is the RIVERPARK Development Company, the United Water District, the City of Oxnard, and I'm assuming the fourth party is the JPA, right? Is that right? Very strange. Anyway, but the JPA is the city. We have 2 seats on it, and United Water, they have 2 seats on it, so 4 board members. So once the developer of this entire development finished all their work, they basically tendered a notice that said, hey, it's yours now. So we have to then go through a process, and the first step of the process was, does the JPA want to accept it as a joint body? And if so, there's a 5-year provision for United Water to figure out what might or might not happen in the basins. And at the end of that 5-year process, if they decide, well, we're not interested, then it automatically reverts back to the city. And so ultimately, the city owns the pits, and more importantly for me, the city has liability for what happens there. So given all of that, I recommended to our board members, so it's the mayor and council member Perillo, it did not make sense to me that if we have full liability of the basins, it does not make sense that we would have only half the decision-making authority over what happens in the basins for a 5-year period. And the reason I'm convinced by that is over the 16-year period, where everyone knew this was coming, that this day was coming, right? There's no surprise. It wasn't like secret date, scratch and sniff and find out later. It was spelled out in the contract. So when the River Park company issued their notice, we as the Joint Powers Authority had no plan. Had no plan about what to do there. So my recommendation to our half of the Joint Powers Authority was, if we have the liability, then we have the liability. Let's not continue with a framework that has failed to produce a plan after 16 years. So there you have it. And that just happened a couple hours ago. So now we get to make the decisions about the next steps there. And that's my update. Now, I understand there's provision for trails around the perimeter, and I don't know the details of where that is and how much progress has been made. But I will find out, and then we'll let you know. But that's my update so far. But this just happened a couple hours ago, where they took the vote, and the JPA did not accept the basins, and so therefore it will revert back to the city probably within a month. We have to take a formal action at City Council. So that's my update. Yes?
So if it comes back to the city, does that mean that the River Park residents are then responsible?
No. It's the city's responsibility. And when I say it comes back to the city, it never left the city. That's the point. Ultimately, we own it, we have the liability. This was never going anywhere else but back to us.
Do you have any ideas on what that future could be, or what department of the city might kind of look at that future?
So it would be our Public Works Department. Now, right now, I'm not sure. All I know is we have to figure out how to make sure that wherever they've done the work to shore up the sides, the walls, that's going to work, and that we need to figure out if there's any more shoring that needs to be done. Right? So my number one concern is safety. So I don't need one of those basins collapsing. Now, ultimately, it was intended for some sort of water retention, recharge basin, which makes sense. We just have to figure out how to get there. And?
Oh, I just wondered, there was money paid into the fund, right?
Yes.
Does that go back to the city for maintenance?
Yes, but it's not very much, because much of it was expended to do what they've done thus far to get clearance from the state, from that mine closing, I don't know what that is, department or commission.
So if new costs are incurred of maintenance, where's that money going to come from?
I have no idea. I have no idea right now. I mean, remember, this deal was struck, was it early 2000s? Right? My frustration is, I don't see the plan. And so after 16 years, there ought to be at least a credible plan presented to me. And there isn't. Yes.
Can we have a swimming pool there?
No.
I tried it, guys, I tried it.
Mr. Nash, I know you have an opinion because you made it clear today. Please, go ahead.
Well, I wanted to stay quiet because ultimately this is a River Park issue, even though, the entire city is kind of on the hook, liability-wise. So, I'll play nice and say that Alex and his staff and the city council, they've done the proper thing. They're locked into an extremely poor contract that did not provide any loopholes for us to escape assuming ownership and therefore liability. So really, that's all. That's city doesn't enter into any similar contracts. And Alex is going to be his word at the moment, so I'm happy with that.
Any other questions?
I was
Yes.
just wondering what else would surprise you in the city of Oxnard?
There have been a few, and there are a few more that I'm discovering, but look, it's when you have a extended period of less than stellar executive leadership, things are going to fall through the cracks, get lost, become problems, get worse, and then they percolate, and then they explode later. And when I give my city manager's update next month, I'll talk about that, but it's the executive team, the management team, these are the people that run the city. And I know in the public, it's very easy to blame the elected officials for everything. But if you look at, and you can look it up online about the role of the electeds in local government and the role of executive management, you'll understand if you have less than stellar executive management, nothing is going to go well. But I'll talk about that more in November. Yes.
So, Alex, I just wanted to, I was at the meeting too, just a couple hours ago, but I wanted to clarify. So is, based on the action that was just taken, after this goes to the city council next, will the JPA essentially no longer exist as a partnership between United Water and the city? Or that still remain?
So I have to let my, one of the city attorneys give me the timeline, but in my mind, the JPA just dissolved. But I don't know the legal, technical paperwork mechanism to finalize, to formalize that. Mr. Mayor?
Thank you very much. I think the city manager did a really good job explaining what just happened. But the thing I'd like to say, and my colleague, I can't say my better half, but one of the best halves of our city council, part of it is Mayor Pro Tem. And one of the things that's particularly difficult is when people have moved into what I believe to be a first-rate neighborhood, and they're paying 1% of their value of their home in property taxes, and they're paying the other 1% in Melrose taxes, that they're not getting services that are A+. And I want to commend these two because one of the things that I've seen is that the city's capacity, and some people say, I don't care about the city's capacity to deliver. I care about you delivering what I've paid for. And I've looked at emails, that have been sent from the residents to me and to other members of the staff. And the job that they've been able to do, as an example, we had a large issue with these maintenance issues all across the city. And in part, it was Sandra who started as the special districts administrator, and Jerry who inherited Sandra's position. And quite frankly, I don't know how either one of these two ladies has been able to get through it because it was decades of mismanagement. So I want to go back and, as a leader, and Mayor Pro Tem can certainly share her perspectives, but I was first elected to the City Council in 2004. And from 2004 to 2008, I was on the City Council. I fought the majority on just about every single issue that came to the council. Sometimes maybe I did it too much. But I challenged what I saw as a Byzantine form of government that was not transparent, and that there were deals that were done, and one of those deals I believe that was not particularly good was this transaction that the city manager just talked about these pits. That there were a lot of deals that were done that are under the auspices of a laissez-faire economy, and that is that government, the less regulations that government has, the less requirements they have in the private sector, the more we're all going to benefit from that. That really is the overriding philosophy. So 2004 to 2008, I took them on every issue I possibly could. And then in 2008, I ran for mayor and I lost. And then in 2010, I ran back for the city council, and by that time I was serving with Mayor Pro Tem Ramirez. And together, there were still remnants of past leadership on the council, and we kind of took that on, step by step, just taking on what was happening. But I've been in Oxnard since 1961. I actually was born in Santa Barbara, California. And to know, I went to school here, I was raised here, and to know and understand that communities like Oxnard, and there are many communities like Oxnard throughout the state of California, these kinds of things that have transpired here in this city aren't unique not only just to Oxnard or to farming communities, right? They've happened all across the state, but it takes decades to undo decades of mismanagement. It does. It's like turning a ship. And so I bear responsibility co-equally with anyone that made decisions during the time that I've been in elected office. I'm at fault. But our government is a part-time government for the council members, and until October of last year, October 1st, is when I officially retired from high school teaching. I was a full-time high school teacher, 40 hours a week, and then I worked as mayor approximately 40 hours a week. And I retired from that last year to devote myself full-time to being mayor. I'm still having fun. I share a staff member with the city manager. City manager's secretary is my secretary. That is, and then of course there's the staff of the city as a whole, right? But I share, even my secretary is the city manager's secretary. That's how much staff I have. So it's overwhelming because right now I'm particularly concerned with the way the city looks, and I'm particularly concerned about the way this neighborhood looks. And it's kind of interesting that we've heard about all these great projects that were just put into place, but there's still others that have not yet been done. And I can say right here that these two in particular are overseeing, it's understated to say a lot. And they're overseeing things where there's no money in those districts to pay for these things. But getting back to this neighborhood, I come here a lot. I go to the collection. I go to 24-hour fitness. I go to Yard House. I don't know if I'm supposed to say that. I really enjoy Yard House. And that, hopefully we're going to go there afterwards. City manager's mine here, so everyone's invited. But as far as this deal with United that the city manager was speaking about, I'll just say this, and he didn't get into the specifics, but it really didn't matter whether we struck a deal with United or not. They had, in this agreement, no liability for those pits. So whether we reached an agreement with them or not, which ended, he's correct today, and it was a very tumultuous ending. The United board members, one of them in particular, was very upset about it. It didn't matter if we entered into an agreement with them or continued this joint powers agreement with them or not. The city, not River Park, the city ultimately bears responsibility, financial responsibility for those pits. And that was a transaction, I can be honest about that, as with everything I do in government, the transaction took place a year before I arrived in the city council. I've been on this joint powers authority now for the last, since I think 2010. So I've been on the joint powers authority almost a decade. And we were not meeting frequently at all. And as the city manager said, River Park had performance bonds that were associated with these pits, and that money is tied up until the city or the joint powers agreement would assume the pits. And they basically called us on it and said, we understand you haven't been able to meet, we understand this and that, but guess what, we're putting you on notice that you got to get this done right away. We don't care what you guys work out. We just want to be off the hook and we want our money released. That's all there is to it, right? So in particular, I can share your concern that maybe some of you were thinking you'd be on the hook for this, right? Is that what some of you were thinking? Well, you're not on the hook. Well, yes, you are on the hook, but so am I, and so is everybody. The whole city has to figure out what we're going to do with these pits. As far as the swimming pool idea, which I thought was very innovative, maybe that won't work, but I don't know. Maybe it can become a fishing resort. I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen with it. But now we have to proceed. We have to figure out what we're going to do with this. I would say under this city manager, I'm going to conclude, and Mayor Pro Tem, I'm sure would like to say a few things to you. So we've had 2 city managers since the old management left. Some of them left on a variety of, under cloud, some of them left, they were forcefully, I mean, it goes on and on and on. So we've had 2 city managers, and Mr. Nguyen is the second of those city managers. So he's been here just over a year, and his predecessor was Greg Nyhoff. And when Greg Nyhoff came after decades and decades of mismanagement, he hired a firm to do an outside assessment of the city, and literally, whether it was in the financial category or the management category, there were hundreds of deficiencies. Hundreds. And I will say that one of the lessons learned is that even if I had served full-time, because I'm now serving full-time, right? But even if I had served full-time and any of my predecessors had served full-time, even though some of them made some really just, I can't even use the word questionable mistakes, illegal activities were made, that there is always in any city government, there is a staff, and the city council is reliant on that staff, as he mentioned. Ultimately, the elected leaders bear responsibility for the city manager and the staff. So you can't just say, well, it's the staff's fault. No, you're the elected leader, you're the one that's held accountable for it, right? But there were decades and decades of decision-making that went on behind closed doors, decades of decision-making that I'm even sure my former colleagues were not aware of, that the management and the staff kept from the city council because they knew had it been exposed what was going to happen to them. What do you guys think? What happens if the people that are your leaders find out that there are all these mistakes? What's going to happen to your job? You're going to lose it, right? So you keep it from them so you don't lose your job. So Mr. Nguyen is, I don't know what to say about him other than the fact that he is like he's a doer on steroids. He is getting more done faster, but remember, when Mr. Nyhoff had that assessment done on the finances of the city and the organization of the city, hundreds of major deficiencies. And the frustration for me as a city council member, and I can probably imagine my colleagues feel the same, if any of you hear about it or read about it in the paper, I'm of the opinion, and I could be wrong, and I don't want to propagate this idea, but maybe I'm doing it by mentioning it, that people think that the mismanagement's going on right now, that we correct a mistake that's been going on for decades. No, I don't care if it's been going on for decades. You're correcting it now, you're responsible for it. You're telling us about it now, you're responsible for it. And the final thing I'd like to end with is that right now we're dealing with the fact that there are major disparities here in Oxnard. One could say it's a tale of 2 cities. There's a very impoverished part of Oxnard, and there's a part of Oxnard that's very affluent. This is one of the more affluent parts of Oxnard. Everybody knows that, right? I live in the central district, the historic district, F Street, where they have the lights and everything during holiday time. And there are parts of this city that are really hurting and need a lot of help. And they look at your neighborhood, which you guys are paying dearly for it, and they look at other parts of the city that people are paying a lot of extra money to have landscaping and all these other things attended to, and they think that the city council, this is the perception sometimes, they think that the city council is favoring you. Why are you spending all the money in your, why are you giving them all this? They actually think that. And no matter what we do to explain ourselves, it's, as my mom once said and says all the time, if you really have to go through a thorough explanation of explaining things, you've lost people. There's only so much you can explain to people about what's going on. So I don't know if any of you have any more questions before I call it Mayor Pro Tem. Yes, ma'am.
I would like to know if you have a requisition out for a new person for a Sanford. Because you're working with that. So
Thank you, Judy, for mentioning that, because I forgot to mention it when I was up here. Yes, the new special districts manager begins on Monday. Her name is Julie Phillips, and I will bring her to the next neighborhood council meeting.
Any other questions? Please all don't raise your hands at once. Mayor Pro Tem. Let's give Mayor Pro Tem a round of applause.
I must say, I think you just did a wonderful job explaining the frustration of the people and the frustration of council, and I really couldn't have explained it better, but I do think that you're absolutely right. People think that, oh, the thing that came out in the paper a couple of weeks ago about paying the overtime, what's it called, callback time for wastewater workers, is something that, what a terrible thing. Actually, if you just think about it, they would have been paid anyway overtime, so it's a question of, we have to pay now because it's been brought to our attention. And it's been frustrating too because we've had such a tremendous turnover of staff at every level, but particularly, you know, Mr. Nguyen has a chart, I think, was it 45? 46 top department heads, executive folks have left the city. It's really hard to get anything done. So I feel like we're finally on the right path, but it is frustrating. I want to just repeat what you said. I had a little bit of trouble seeing the benefit of districts because I feel like people will feel, oh, well, you don't have to care about the rest of the city if you represent River Park or if you represent South Oxnard. The reality is what impacts South Oxnard impacts all of us, what impacts River Park impacts all of us. And I also get that question, why is the city favoring River Park or the beach area or whatever? You have to say, well, they're paying so much money for those things, it's not being provided by the city. And it's, you know, still, again, it's the look. I want to say the mayor and I and our colleagues are really working hard to not let people take advantage of the city of Oxnard. And that's been happening for a long time. I think people thought, well, it's a big city. The guys are in charge, or they do, the guys are in charge and they know what they're doing, and it's okay if we give a little bit to this developer or this power plant company. Or one of the first things we did when we were on council together for the first time was to take back our recycling center, which was a terrible, terrible deal for the residents of this city. So we're trying to do things like that. We fought the power plant. They were going to put something here that was unnecessary and obsolete, and it's a never-ending battle. And so I think when the history is written, someone in the distant future will say, oh yeah, they really did do a good job. I'm hoping that. But right now, it's tough. We have budget issues. You know, we went through a very difficult budget process. This city never acknowledged the recession. Other cities in our area let lots of people go, downsize. We never did it. Why? Oh, we had lots of money. It was the credit card, I guess, and now we have to come to terms with it. We're doing it's painful, but under Mr. Nguyen's leadership, I think we're finally getting it right. So hang in there with us.
So I want to thank you, and I don't know if you have questions for Mayor Pro Tem. Does anyone have a question for Mayor Pro Tem?
I'll be glad if it helps you. I'll give you a copy of my tax bill. My tax man thinks I own $1 million house, so I'll give you a copy of it if it helps you to explain to people why this place is this way.
Right. Yes. And, well, again, if dealing with disparities is a difficult thing, we all know that, because there are issues here in town that, of course, economic development, I hope, will address, you know, more opportunities for people, higher paying jobs. I've been working on that. Mayor Pro Tem, the council's been working on that, and this city manager is putting a lot of things in place that are so exciting. And today I just told him that I've never been felt as excited as I do under his leadership. Mr. Nyhoff and I came along very well, as so did Mayor Pro Tem and Mr. Nyhoff, the previous city manager, and I was really excited when Mr. Nyhoff came and the things that he did. But let me tell you, it was like for him, the bottom line is it was a tsunami for him. And I still feel badly about it, but it was like crisis management every single day. And I think the man would not be on this earth had he stayed here. He left, and Mr. Nguyen took his spot. And look at how normal he looks, right? But he's great. He's a great stand-up comedian. You should see what the picture he showed about what he looked like when he first came to Oxnard a year ago. Then there was a picture of him, and then he shows what he's going to look like in about 10 years and in 2 years. And it was absolutely hilarious. You had your hand raised.
Yeah, I wanted to know, for all the issues that Oxnard has or had, is someone doing an audit? Is it an outside company? Is it people in Oxnard?
That's a good question. So when there was a lot of funny business with Oxnard's finances that took place, there was debate amongst the council members about whether or not, just like counties have auditors, whether or not the city would need an auditor, and then that auditor maybe would be independently elected, as an example. And ultimately, I was convinced it was Councilman Perrello and myself that were probably most on that, but all the council members wanted to really try to find what would be the best solution to make sure that the egregious actions that took place in the past would never happen again. So what we did is we hired a auditing firm that reports not to the staff but to the city council, and they identified further, because a lot of the mistakes, a lot of them have been corrected. They identified 4 different areas where they thought potentially that there could be the risk for a variety of things. And in fact, Mr. Nguyen and city staff, we had, because I'm the chairman of the finance committee, that we had a meeting just yesterday about when that final product is actually due. And so we're going to be taking a look at, as an example, overtime, which at $10 million a year plus, you can imagine there can sometimes be issues with that. The golf course, because the golf course kind of operated out of the purview of the city manager. The city corps, which is part of the recreation department, also had a lot of independence. And then finally the Performing Arts Center, which also has even today its own nonprofit that runs it. And right now we're going through a process where bids are being solicited or have been solicited to get a new operator for the Performing Arts Center. So those 4 areas right now are what we're specifically looking at. It doesn't mean that other areas aren't being looked at by the staff and by the finance director. And I'll make a quick mention about him and his assistant here in a second. But it's going to be the job then of the city council to then look at other areas that we think might have problems that need to be audited. But the goal of that is to have a checks and balance with an outside auditor that is going to bring truthful information to the city council, so that some of the, again, mistakes that have happened in the past will not reoccur.
Only certain areas, not every single department, should they have some kind of audit system for every single department?
Well, there's supposed to be one of the shortcomings of that was uncovered by Mr. Nyhoff in the assessment of the city's finances is that one of the number 1 areas is that there weren't enough internal controls, and that gets to the very core. That word internal controls is an accounting term, and that this lack of internal controls is one of the main reasons why so many things were able to go haywire. And so now it's beefing up the finance staff in particular and other areas to have internal controls so those mistakes aren't made. So there is constant checks and balance on a daily basis where there wasn't before. The other thing is we are in the process right now of putting together a new computer brain of the city called the ERP. And we're still operating, we're operating on software that's a quarter of a century old, and it's basically printing out spreadsheets. So every time the staff would be asked for financial information, they'd have to do it manually. So now we're replacing that system, again, under Mr. Nguyen's leadership, so that we can then get that information online and it's more transparent with the public. I mean, every landscape, you know, the information that was just asked for about, I like to see our finances, that should all be on, every single detail like that should be online. Well, with a system like this ERP, when it's implemented, it's going to take a year and a half to fully be implemented. I believe it's payroll, human resources, and finance where we're starting, and then it's going to go into other areas, and so the whole city will operate on that one system, and it's going to cost over a lengthy time period about $15 million. That's the total price tag, because there's constant software updates and information. The system that we're getting off of now is 25 years ago, it was state-of-the-art, and today it's like, imagine if you had a computer, a personal computer of any kind, or even a cell phone, that was 25 years old, right? I mean, first of all, we probably couldn't even turn it on, right? So that's what we're doing to make sure that doesn't happen. And let me just say that, without making a value judgment about previous city councils, Mayor Pro Tem can attest to this. We have one city council, 7 members now, that couldn't be more honest. And they don't cut deals under the table with people, and they don't use their positions to promote themselves. And I've seen no, like self-aggrandizement, self-promotion, all that kind of stuff. All the things that I think have certainly been a part of Oxnard's past. And I also think that what happened in Oxnard, and I was here again in 2004, and the individuals I served with, we all went to the same Catholic school together. And they were much older, or they were older, or are older. And I should have mentioned the name Catholic. I should have said we all went to the same school, but we all went, and it was a very close-knit community, and we grew up in an era where there was an oligarchy. Very few people ran this town, but they had all the power. And quite frankly, with their moving on and a new city council coming in, it is not only a new day, it's a completely new era. Any other questions? Any other questions? No more swimming pool discussion?
You killed it.
All right, so it looks like we have 2 more announcements.